Picture this. A security guard blocks a well-dressed black man from entering a gleaming corporate building. "Sir, this is a private event for executives only," the guard sneers, eyeing the man's simple clothes with obvious disdain. What that guard doesn't know is that this supposed uninvited guest owns the entire building, the company inside it, and everything they can see for blocks around. Tonight, in ways nobody could imagine, everything is about to change. The man standing calmly outside his own headquarters is Terrence Washington, though most people wouldn't recognize him if they passed him on the street. At 45 years old, he's built one of the most successful tech companies in America from absolutely nothing, starting with just a borrowed laptop and an idea that everyone said would never work. Today, Washington Digital Solutions employs over 50,000 people worldwide and generates billions in revenue annually. But here's what makes Terrence different from almost every other billionaire you've ever heard of. He deliberately lives like he never forgot where he came from. While other tech moguls collect $100 million yachts and private jets, Terrence drives a 10-year-old Honda Civic that he refuses to replace because, as he puts it, "It still gets me where I need to go." He lives in the same modest 3-bedroom house he bought when the company first turned profitable, and he shops at the same grocery store he's been going to for 15 years. His neighbors have no idea they're living next to one of the wealthiest men in the country, and that's exactly how he likes it. He believes that staying connected to his roots keeps him connected to what really matters. On this particular evening, Terrence has decided to make an unannounced appearance at his company's annual shareholders gala. He's been traveling the world for the past 6 months, quietly funding schools in underprivileged communities and supporting small businesses in developing countries. The board of directors has been running day-to-day operations in his absence, and frankly, he's curious to see how things are going without his direct oversight. What he discovers tonight will shock him more than anything he's encountered in 20 years of business. The Washington Digital Solutions headquarters towers 37 floors above the city, its glass facade reflecting the lights of the urban landscape like a beacon of success and innovation. Tonight, the building is buzzing with activity as the company's most important shareholders, executives, and investors gather for their most important significant event of the year. Luxury cars line the valet parking area, designer gowns sweep across marble floors, and champagne flows freely as the corporate elite celebrate another year of unprecedented growth. Terrence approaches the main entrance wearing dark jeans, a simple button-down shirt, and comfortable sneakers, the same type of outfit he's worn to every important meeting throughout his career. He believes that ideas matter more than appearances, and he's never been one to put on airs for anyone. But as he walks toward the entrance of his own building, the security guard stationed at the door immediately steps in front of him, blocking his path with an outstretched arm. "Excuse me, sir," the guard says with barely concealed irritation. "This is a private event. Do you have an invitation?" The guard's eyes scan Terrence from head to toe, clearly unimpressed by what he sees. The implication is obvious. Someone dressed like this couldn't possibly belong at an event for corporate executives. "I don't have a physical invitation," Terrence replies calmly, "but I assure you I'm supposed to be here." He maintains his composure, though he's genuinely surprised by the interaction. In all his years of running this company, he's never been stopped from entering his own building. "Right," the guard scoffs. "Listen, friend, this isn't some public open house. This is for people who actually work for the company, important people. Maybe you're thinking of a different event." The condescension in his voice is unmistakable, and other guests entering the building begin to notice the commotion. Before Terrence can respond, a booming voice cuts through the evening air. What seems to be the problem here? Bradford Hamilton III strides over with the confidence of someone who's never been told no in his entire life. At 38, Bradford represents everything that old money and inherited privilege can produce. Perfectly styled hair, a suit that costs more than most people's monthly salary, and the kind of entitlement that comes from never having to work for anything meaningful in his life. Bradford is the new head of operations, hired by the board 6 months ago while Terrence was abroad. His resume is impressive on paper: Harvard MBA, family connections to several Fortune 500 companies, and a track record of increasing quarterly profits wherever he's worked. What his resume doesn't mention is his talent for creating toxic work environments and his barely concealed belief that success should be reserved for people who look and sound exactly like him. This gentleman claims he's supposed to be at our event, the security guard explains, clearly relieved that someone with authority has arrived to handle the situation. Bradford looks Terrence up and down with obvious disdain, taking in the casual clothes and unassuming demeanor. I see. And you are? He asks, though his tone suggests he's already decided that whoever Terrence is, he doesn't belong here. I'm Terrence Washington, comes the simple reply. Bradford's expression doesn't change. Despite being the head of operations for Washington Digital Solutions, he's never bothered to learn anything about the company's founder beyond basic financial metrics. To him, Terrence Washington is just a name on old paperwork, certainly not someone who would show up dressed like this to such an important event. Listen, friend, Bradford says, using the same condescending tone as the security guard. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't amateur night. This is a serious business event for serious business people. Maybe you saw something online and thought you could just walk in, but that's not how the real world works. His voice carries the kind of casual cruelty that comes from years of looking down on people he considers beneath him. A small crowd of other executives and shareholders begins to gather, drawn by the unusual spectacle of someone being turned away from the event. Some pull out their phones, seemingly amused by the situation unfolding before them. The scene has all the makings of viral social media content, a well-dressed corporate executive putting some random person in their place. I understand there might be some confusion, Terrence says, still maintaining his calm demeanor despite the growing humiliation of the situation. Perhaps I could speak with someone from Human Resources, or maybe someone could call the main office to verify. Verify what? Bradford interrupts with a laugh that's picked up by several nearby smartphones. That you're some important businessman? Look around you, friend. Do you see anyone else here dressed like they're going to a barbecue? This is for people who actually contribute something to this company, people who understand what it means to be professional. The implicit racism in Bradford's words hangs in the air like a toxic cloud. He's careful not to say anything explicitly offensive. He's too media savvy for that. But his meaning is crystal clear to everyone within earshot. The message is that people like Terrence simply don't belong in spaces like this, regardless of their actual qualifications or achievements. You know what? Bradford continues, clearly enjoying the attention from the growing crowd of onlookers. I think the McDonald's down the street might be more your speed. They're probably hiring, and I'm sure they'd appreciate someone with your level of ambition. The crowd erupts in laughter, and phone cameras capture every moment of what they perceive as a masterful put-down. Several executives nod approvingly at Bradford's handling of the situation. In their minds, he's successfully protected their exclusive event from someone who clearly doesn't understand boundaries. Terrence feels the familiar sting of discrimination that he thought he'd left behind years ago. Despite building a billion-dollar company and employing tens of thousands of people, despite his philanthropy and his contributions to society, he's still being judged solely by his appearance and the color of his skin. For a moment, he considers revealing his identity right then and there, imagining the looks of shock and embarrassment that would follow. But as the security guard moves to escort him away from the building, Terrence overhears something that makes his blood run cold. Bradford is speaking to a group of major shareholders, outlining his vision for the company's future. The plan he's describing bears no resemblance to the values and principles that Terrence spent 2 decades building into Washington Digital Solutions. Our biggest opportunity for growth lies in streamlining operations, Bradford explains to the nodding executives. We're currently carrying about 2,000 employees who frankly aren't contributing enough value to justify their salaries. By eliminating these positions and moving our manufacturing operations overseas, we could increase profit margins by 30% within the next fiscal year. Terrence realizes that Bradford is talking about laying off 2,000 people, real people with families, mortgages, and dreams, simply to boost quarterly numbers that are already incredibly strong. These aren't underperforming employees, they're hard-working people who've helped build the company into what it is today. But Bradford isn't finished. We also need to eliminate some of the more frivolous spending that's been draining our resources. The scholarship program for underprivileged students, the community development initiatives, the employee wellness programs. These might make us feel good, but they don't generate revenue. Our shareholders deserve better returns on their investments. Every program Bradford mentions is something Terrence created personally, funded from his own pocket in many cases. The scholarship program alone has sent over 500 students to college, many of them the first in their families to receive higher education. The community development initiatives have revitalized entire neighborhoods, creating jobs and opportunities in areas that other companies had written off as hopeless. As Terrence processes what he's hearing, a young black man in a janitor's uniform approaches hesitantly. Jerome has been working at Washington Digital Solutions for 3 years, putting himself through night school while supporting his elderly mother and his 7-year-old daughter. He's one of the hardest working people in the building, often staying late to make sure everything is perfect for important events like tonight's gala. "Excuse me," Jerome says quietly, clearly uncomfortable interrupting but unable to stay silent. "I think there might be some mistake. This is Mr. Washington. He's what?" Bradford snaps, whirling around to face Jerome with fury in his eyes. "Are you seriously going to tell me how to do my job? Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" Jerome takes a step back, clearly intimidated but still trying to help. "I'm sorry, sir. I just thought—" "You thought wrong." Bradford cuts him off viciously. "Your job is to empty trash cans and mop floors, not to think. And if you can't remember your place, maybe we need to find someone who can. How would you like to explain to your daughter why Daddy doesn't have a job anymore?" The threat hangs in the air like a sword, and Jerome's face goes pale. Everyone in the crowd can see that this isn't just about the current situation. Bradford is using his power to crush someone who dared to speak up, someone who has everything to lose and no power to fight back. Terrence watches this interaction with growing anger, but also with a sense of clarity about what kind of person Bradford really is. This isn't just about casual racism or corporate arrogance. This is about a fundamental lack of respect for human dignity. Bradford sees people like Jerome as disposable, as obstacles to his vision of maximum profitability at any cost. In that moment, Terrence makes a decision that will surprise everyone, including himself. Instead of immediately revealing his identity and using his power to crush Bradford in the most public and humiliating way possible, he chooses a different path. He quietly approaches Jerome and whispers something in his ear, then disappears into the crowd of people still gathered around the building's entrance. What Terrence whispered was simple: "Don't worry about your job. Everything is going to be okay." But what he does next demonstrates the kind of character that built his empire in the first place. While Bradford continues his presentation inside, detailing his plans to strip away everything that made Washington Digital Solutions special, Terrence spends the next 2 hours doing something extraordinary. He walks through the building's service areas, talking quietly with custodial staff, security guards, cafeteria workers, and maintenance personnel, all the people who keep the company running but who are usually invisible to executives like Bradford. He learns that Bradford's toxic leadership style has already begun to poison the work environment. Employees are afraid to speak up about problems or suggest improvements. The mentorship programs that Terrence established have been quietly discontinued. Several long-term employees have already been forced out and replaced with cheaper, less experienced workers. The company culture that took decades to build is being systematically dismantled by someone who sees human beings as nothing more than line items on a balance sheet. But Terrence also discovers something that gives him hope. Despite Bradford's attempts to reshape the company culture, the core values that Terrence instilled are still alive among the workforce. Employees still look out for each other, still take pride in their work, and still believe in the company's mission to use technology to make the world a better place. Bradford may have the authority to make policy changes, but he hasn't been able to change the hearts of the people who actually do the work. As the evening progresses, Terrence formulates a plan that goes far beyond simply firing Bradford and moving on. He realizes that this situation is actually an opportunity, a chance to demonstrate what real leadership looks like, and to show that true strength comes not from dominating others but from lifting them up. The climactic moment arrives as Bradford takes the stage for his keynote presentation, basking in the applause of shareholders who are excited about his promises of increased profits. The lights dim and a single spotlight illuminates Bradford as he begins to speak about his vision for the company's future, a future that bears no resemblance to the values that built Washington Digital Solutions in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, Bradford begins with practice confidence. Tonight marks the beginning of a new era for this company, an era of unprecedented growth, streamlined operations, and maximum value for our shareholders. We're going to eliminate inefficiencies, cut unnecessary expenses, and focus on what really matters: profit. The crowd applauds enthusiastically, completely unaware that they're celebrating the destruction of everything that made their company special. Bradford continues for several minutes, outlining his plans with the kind of cold calculation that treats human beings as nothing more than expendable resources. But then something unexpected happens. The lights suddenly dim further and a new spotlight appears at the back of the room. Every head turns to see a figure walking slowly but confidently down the center aisle. It's Terrence, but now he's changed into a simple black suit, not expensive or flashy, but dignified and appropriate for the occasion. The event host, who had been standing quietly at the side of the stage, suddenly steps forward with a card that has just been handed to him by someone in the crowd. His voice carries clearly through the now silent room. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder, majority owner, and CEO of Washington Digital Solutions, Mr. Terrence Washington. The silence that follows is deafening. Bradford's face goes from confident to confused to absolutely mortified in the span of about 3 seconds. The security guard who had blocked Terrence from entering the building looks like he wants to disappear into the floor. The executives who had laughed at Bradford's earlier comments suddenly realize they've been documenting their own humiliation on social media. But what happens next is what truly separates leaders from mere authority figures. Instead of launching into a tirade about how he's been treated, instead of publicly humiliating Bradford the way he was humiliated, Terrence does something that catches everyone completely off guard. He smiles. "Good evening, everyone," he says in a calm, warm voice that somehow manages to fill the entire room without being loud or aggressive. "I apologize for the unconventional entrance, but sometimes the best way to understand what's really happening in your company is to see it from the outside looking in." He pauses, letting his words sink in before continuing. "I've spent the evening talking with our employees, the real backbone of this organization, and what I've learned is both troubling and inspiring. Troubling because I've discovered that some of our leadership has lost sight of what makes this company special, but inspiring because our employees, the people who actually do the work that makes everything else possible, still understand what we're really about." The crowd is hanging on every word, but Terrence's attention turns to Bradford, who looks like he's about to have a panic attack. "Bradford," he says, not unkindly, "you've presented an interesting vision for this company's future, a vision focused entirely on short-term profits at the expense of everything else. But I think you've fundamentally misunderstood what Washington Digital Solutions is really about. Instead of the public destruction everyone expects, Terrence launches into something much more powerful, a teaching moment. When I started this company 20 years ago, I had a choice. I could build a business that extracted as much value as possible from everything and everyone around it, or I could build something that created value for the world. I chose the latter, and it's made all the difference." He gestures to the crowd of employees, shareholders, and executives. "Every person in this room, from our janitors to our board members, contributes something essential to our success. The moment we start seeing people as disposable, as obstacles to profit rather than the source of our strength, we stop being a company worth working for." Terrence then does something that shocks everyone even more than his dramatic entrance. He announces that Bradford will indeed be leaving the company, but with a generous severance package and assistance finding new employment. "Everyone deserves the chance to learn and grow," he explains. "Bradford's approach isn't right for our company, but that doesn't mean he can't find success elsewhere." But the real surprise comes when Terrence calls Jerome to the stage. The young janitor looks terrified as he makes his way through the crowd, clearly convinced that he's about to be fired in front of everyone. Instead, Terrence announces that Jerome is being promoted to head of facilities management, with a substantial salary increase and a full scholarship fund established for his daughter's education. Jerome stood up for what was right, even when he had everything to lose, Terrence explains to the stunned audience. That's the kind of character we want in leadership positions. That's the kind of person who makes this company what it is. The transformation in the room is immediate and palpable. Employees who had been standing quietly in the background suddenly stand a little taller, realizing that their contributions are valued and recognized. Shareholders begin to understand that they're not just investing in a company that makes money, but in an organization that makes a positive difference in the world. Terrence concludes his impromptu speech with words that will be quoted and shared millions of times in the days to come. Success isn't measured by how much power you have over others, but by how you use that power to lift others up. Tonight, some of you learned that you should never judge someone by their appearance because you never know who you're really talking to. But here's a more important lesson. Treat everyone with dignity and respect, not because of who they might be, but because of who you are. The applause that follows isn't the polite, obligatory clapping that typically greets corporate presentations. This is genuine, sustained appreciation from people who have just witnessed something extraordinary, a demonstration of what real leadership looks like. In the weeks that follow, the story spreads far beyond the walls of Washington Digital Solutions. Videos of the incident go viral, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of focusing on Bradford's humiliation or the drama of the reveal, the story becomes a powerful example of grace under pressure and the importance of treating everyone with respect. Bradford surprisingly becomes one of the most vocal advocates for the lessons learned that night. Humbled by the experience and freed from the pressure to maintain his facade of superiority, he starts a nonprofit organization focused on helping other privileged executives examine their own biases and blind spots. His first speaking engagement is at a Washington Digital Solutions Company meeting, where he publicly apologizes for his behavior and thanks Terrence for showing him a better way to be a leader. Jerome thrives in his new role, implementing innovative programs that make the workplace more efficient and more welcoming for everyone. His daughter, inspired by her father's example and supported by her scholarship fund, dreams of one day starting her own company built on the same values of respect and opportunity for all. The story ends not with revenge or punishment, but with transformation and growth. It becomes a reminder that true power lies not in the ability to dominate others, but in the wisdom to lift them up. It shows that respect costs nothing but is worth everything, and that the person you underestimate today might be the one who changes your life tomorrow. Most importantly, it demonstrates that in a world often focused on getting even, sometimes the most revolutionary act is choosing to be kind instead.